Hi. In this video I will be explaining how I evaluate or grade your interpretations in your exams, or the criteria used in the evaluation of your interpretations. Now, there are a couple of points that I take in consideration, which are the ones here. The first one is comprehension of the original. The next one is the interpreter's output, grammar, language, message reformulation, and at the end I make an average and tell you your global achievement. Now, the comprehension of the original is the only thing I take in consideration in your exams. But I will be explaining all of them because in class I will be telling you if you need any improvement in any of the other points. Now, the comprehension of the original englobes omissions, misunderstandings, and additions. Omissions is when you skip a word or words and you don't interpret them. Now, this could be done deliberately, which is something sometimes justifiable, and but sometimes we simply forget to interpret something. That would be omissions. The next point, misunderstandings. Well, sometimes we interpreters simply misunderstand an idea, and that misunderstanding is the one that we interpret, and sometimes we commit the error of making additions. Additions is incredibly common in students while they're interpreting. Now, I remind you, this is the only things that I consider in your exams: omissions, misunderstandings, and additions. Now, regarding interpreters' output, clarity of ideas, an important point. I mean, how clearly you're able to organize words so that the ideas are clearly stated. Hesitations is something also important. Here I recommend you record yourself, because sometimes when we are rendering our interpretations, we are not aware of how many hesitations we make. Hesitations are things like things like that. Quality of voice, very important too. This is something I criticize a lot in class, or ask you to improve. The volume that you use and how clearly you're speaking is something that many students need to improve. This is something that you can also, practice at home. Simply ask someone who's a couple of meters away from you if they can understand what you're saying. Rhythm, a very important point too. Rhythm, it's very difficult for somebody who's listening, an interpreter, to really understand if the interpreter is changing the rhythm constantly. That means that a couple of words the interpreter interprets very, very quickly, and then suddenly stops because he's had a word that or a phrase or an idea that cannot interpret, and stops for a couple of seconds, and then begins interpreting quickly again, and then stops, and then sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly. That is it makes it very difficult for the listener. So a good rhythm would be a constant rhythm, and usually not very fast, because sometimes we do need to stop for a second or two. So if you're speaking at a rhythm that is not too fast, a stop of a second or two won't disorient the listener. Fluidity is important too. It's related with rhythm. It's the fluency in which we speak. Pronunciation, of course, if you're pronouncing incorrectly, it could create misunderstandings in the listener. And intonation. Let me read some words here with no intonation. That means speaking in a robotic manner. Interpretation, evaluation, criteria, comprehension of original omissions or misunderstandings or additions, interpreter's output, clarity of ideas, hesitation, quality of voice. That would be speaking in a robotic manner, no intonation. Intonation is what gives life to words, phrases, meaning. Let me read it with intonation now. Interpretation, evaluation, criteria. Comprehension of original. Omissions or misunderstandings or additions. Interpreter's output. Clarity of ideas, hesitation, quality of voice, rhythm. So as you can see, intonation gives life, and also intonation sometimes gives meaning to what we're saying. So very, very important to know how to speak with intonation. Grammar, of course, very important. Regarding language, the choice of the vocabulary in the register. As we know, we can say something with a high register or a low register, so we need to take in consideration that when we're listening to the original. To use the same register, either high or low. And last, the message reformulation, source, target, language equivalence. The choice of words that we make should be equivalent. The idea should be equivalent. As we know, there are many synonyms for an idea, so we need to choose the one that is the most equivalent to the original. And I repeat, the only things that will take in consideration in your exams are omissions, misunderstandings, or additions. Here I allow 33 mistakes. 33 mistakes out of 100. That means if you have 33 mistakes out of 100, your grade would be 0. But, for instance, if you have 3 mistakes out of 100 words, that would be around a 90. So, and believe me, that's a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. 33 mistakes is a lot of mistakes in 100 words. So, don't worry. I mean, getting a 90, it's not that difficult if you practice and you concentrate on what you're doing. Alright, that will be all regarding the interpretation evaluation criteria.